All right, and up here on the top left-hand side of the map, we have the red Terran player from Team Makers. He is souL. Every time I hear that one, man, every time I just think of Maynard. And it's so unfortunate because I'm pretty sure he's asleep right now.
What they need to do is catch us off guard with just like throw in like the little J-pop one. You know, one that nobody expects.
Something super cheery. You get like a loot or something in there.
Like we do the intro for like I don't know whoever's left in this tournament, and we're like, hey, all of a sudden you just hear like pon way. You're like, oh my god, what the hell is going on here?
You know, I don't know if you've been catching much of like the ESL or sorry, the DreamHack Masters Australia sections of the broadcast that actually typically happen before.
That happens in the dark hour. Oh
my god, Nate, the music that they played there is just absurd. And I don't, not even to like the in-game player intro music, the between break music. I feel like I'm on a trip. I feel like I'm back in 2012. DreamHack is still just playing like safety dance and stuff. I'm wondering what year is it.
If I can't dance to all my high school social classics, then what am I doing watching StarCraft tournaments, honestly?
Oh, a nice little micro battle over here. The probe abusing those minerals, staying alive. It's regenerating the shields now, and it's trying to find an opportunity to get out of here. I think the Marine has finally cornered it, and it will go down.
Job. So here's one interesting thing I've already noticed. I've talked a lot about Terran players going for one Marine into Reactor, and souL did SCV scout around his base for a proxy, but he didn't go across the map, and he's taking the second guess. But Fear Dragon, he started the factory first, which you don't normally see, because if you know, in the case of any sort of early aggression, like you need Marines really to be safe. Even if he moves his factory to the reactor and builds Hellions, it's not necessarily guaranteed to stop like early stalker poke type stuff. I don't personally mind it too much, but it's an interesting variation of this. And the reason why he did this was to get Hellions out faster. That was the whole point, because he could have had the reactor way earlier, but then the factory, you know, he would not have been able to start building the units as quickly. So I wonder if he's just going to try and go straight in front of him. And he's building the Reaper too. So it looks like he wants to do the boop build, right? He just wants a little boop, stalker out of the way with the Reaper, and then just run 4 Hellions in before he has any other units.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too, because MaNa did a very, very adept job with his adept of scouting for proxies along that north side, scouting around a lot of the areas where you'd expect maybe like a proxy starport or something would be built if there was going to be that kind of drop the Hellions over into your main. But that also means when you're scouting around the map, you're not scouting your opponent's actual natural expansion. So Adept only just now makes it the natural, and now MaNa should be realizing, but he doesn't actually have a completed wall. The Adept does manage to make its way into the main base, sees a tech lab on the starport, which is also some good scouting. But Nate, this is not even close to a wall.
Yeah, you know, microing that Adept could actually end up coming back to bite MaNa in the butt, because he just needs to have the focus over here on these Hellions that have gotten catastrophic damage done to the economy of the Protoss player. 14 probes. I mean, 16 probes. This is highway robbery, Fear Dragon.
He literally obliterated every probe at that natural expansion. That is brutal right there. And
is that me dropping on this?
That was you for a split second. That was you for a split second.
I'm just going to disconnect out of the game.
Okay.
I'll watch off the preview monitor.
All right.
I don't know.
Well, yeah. I think the game is still going.
I'm still here, so I don't know what's going on with the game, but
yeah. I think we can still go back to the game. Yes, perfect. But yeah, we do have the Raven coming on out. souL is just in such a great spot. I mean, Nate, this is also a really nice defensive setup there for souL as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the position that he's in with a follow-up. We all know the defensive power of the Raven. You can use interference matrix to push anything back early on, like a prism. Auto turrets are just going to give you a little bit more of that chonkiness. But when you look at just the circumstances of the specific map, like it's a really difficult position to come back from for MaNa, because at this point in the game, you're generally expecting to be pretty far ahead economically, right? You're supposed to have your third going up around that 5-minute mark, and the probe count difference to make up for the fact that, you know, mules are mules. Supposed to be close to like 8 or 9 probe lead, but instead he's down 10 workers. So MaNa's going to need to really pull off some fancy, fantastic micro with his stalkers, or I don't know. I'm just scared that souL's going to build up for a big bio push and just kill him.
The decision making here for MaNa is really interesting to me, because this is a sad reality. When you lose that many probes, you are extremely far behind, like we keep saying over and over and over again. And for the Protoss player, or whoever's in those kind of situations, you have to take a risk of some kind. If you don't take a risk, the game just proceeds normally and you're just playing from behind the whole game. MaNa is still, despite the fact that he's going to have a lack of resources, he can't really invest into a lot of tech and everything, he's going to start up his double upgrades right here. And just, I think, kind of like you were saying, say, well, I think you're not going to be able to attack me for a little bit, so I'll still get up my upgrades. I'm going to forego my third base. And I guess maybe the idea here is that he just intercepts a big push out and is able to shut it down, because that's what he's investing in.
Maybe. That's going to be really hard to do regardless. The Raven's going to go out to do some harass. And I think that souL kind of recognizes that his strength in this position is going to be that economy. He doesn't need to attack, right? We were talking about it a little bit, but look how fast he got this armory. Look how fast he's getting drilling claws, right? He's kind of battening down the hatches, as it were. And while, yes, not attacking does give the opportunity for MaNa to get his economy back to normal, as that worker camp is very close. That Raven, ooh, careful with where you're tucking yourself there, buddy. That's a lot of energy. You do not want to lose that Raven. But like, he doesn't have the same pressure to push. Normally, like Terran versus Protoss is all about trying to make that big attack, slow down the Protoss economy. But instead, it's kind of flipped on its head. And souL's like, well, I just need to make sure that I have the army I think I can win with. And then I can go do stuff, because my opponent should never have anywhere near as much resources as me after the way that he started the game. He killed an entire main mineral line worth of probes on with those first 4 Hellions.
Well, we do see the unsiege over here from souL, so at least looking to kind of move out toward the third base or something. Let's see how far out he goes. The feedback actually does have a bit more range, so you can see the High Templar did manage to kill off that Raven over there. The MaNa now finished up his 1-1 upgrades. Doesn't quite have the resources to invest into 2-2. But Storm is on the way. Observer spotting out that medevac. Oh, MaNa's already prepared. He's already got 4 stalkers in the mineral line, ready to blink in on top of that medevac.
But here's the tricky part, though. Fear Dragon, the Widowmine, is still going to be able to burrow because he has the drilling claws. 5 more probes do get killed. And then because of the Yammary, he's also still invisible without bringing the Observer over there. So he needs to be fast at reacting. The rest of the army is coming over towards this third base. He's got a healthy supply lead. Do not see medevac with this, though. And yeah, Storm makes me nervous.
5 seconds away from finishing over here. Those 2 High Templars have been building up energy. The Zealots are buying a little bit of time. There's 1 Storm being used. Does soften up some of the Marines. And normally that wouldn't be that bad, but you're right, Nate. Without medevacs, even just sitting in the Storm for a few seconds is going to hurt.
Yeah, this was a really interesting decision path coming out of souL, because I feel like he had the ability to set himself up for like one big Doom push. He may have been trying to be a little bit too fancy here, because even though MaNa did not have a tremendous amount of economy, he did not need to have a tremendous amount of economy, because he ended up having these, you know, his stalkers fought the units they were good against. And then you have bio without medevacs. And no matter how much bio you have, like Stim is 20% of the unit's health. Stim is 20% of their health. Medevacs are what makes that okay. But normally it's like, no, you actually don't want to just be stimming willy-nilly. You know, your army loses so many of its hit points, but he does have that next hit coming up. He does finally have medevacs with this, and he's got basically just a single immortal anchoring this entire defense. The pylon is shut down, as is the rest of this third base.
Yeah, souL did a really good job also focus firing down the High Templar that was a little too far on the front lines over there. Ends up getting punished. The Nexus getting very, very low on hit points, and MaNa's going to tap out. souL takes the first game.
Very well done there. Good performance by souL. And just, you know, I try not to try and pretend like we can see through the shroud of everything, but I really liked how he went for the 1 Marine opener, but he delayed going for straight into that reactor so that he could get his factory just a few seconds faster. And I think his Hellion production probably ends up being, if he tried to do it the other way, it's probably like almost 10 to 15 seconds more earlier than you typically expect it. And also, I don't know if he intentionally let the Adept into his base, but like getting MaNa to micro the Adept in his base while he was about to get hit with the Boop build, well, that was just devastating. Those Hellions, like honestly, if it's a ladder game and you lose 16 probes to 4 Hellions from your opponent at 5 minutes, you're leaving. You're leaving the game in that situation. And I just want to apologize to viewers out there for the disconnect, not trying to lag. Obviously, my internet's working. I don't know if some of the disconnects today are server related or something of that sort, but if I experience any latency in the next game, I'm going to drop out and just watch the preview monitor. I do like being in the game so I can click on upgrades and try to tell you guys insightful things about what the players are going for that we don't get to see because our observer can only be in so many places at once. He's not Jan Michael Vincent.
I don't even know who that is, but I'll take your word for it. Yeah, hopefully you don't get routed through like Vanya's house again for your internet, and you'll be able to stay in the game just fine and hear all the game sound effects as well. That's the big thing for me. Whenever I feel like I have to cast off of a preview monitor or something, I'm just like, I can't hear anything.
Yeah, it's been like, I think it's been like 4 people that have had some connection issues today already. It's kind of seemingly, I don't know if it's just a bad day. I'm like, I'm still here. My camera doesn't look like a potato. I'm like, my net should be working, but yeah, if we see anything like that, I'll drop out pretty quickly. So hopefully everything is all right going into Everdream for map number 2 of this delectable Terran vs Protoss series that we find ourselves in, Fear Dragon.
You know, Nate, I have to commend MaNa on that last game because, like you said, that's a situation that a lot of pro players just leave. And the fact that I think if he had gotten 1 or 2 slightly better storms and like kept that 3rd High Templar alive, I think MaNa had a chance to defend there. Like, that's already amazing. That's way more than I thought he would be able to do there. So even though he's going to be sitting down 0-1, I think he's actually he pretty impressed me that last game. But we're going to be starting down here, the bottom left-hand side of the map. He still has deserved that first map victory. It is souL from Team Makers.
And his opponent in the Northeast, the blue Protoss player representing Team Liquid, he is MaNa. Yeah, but there's things in StarCraft that we can talk about, and one of people's favorite things is what gets glorified when we cast when you watch Pro SC2. It's all about the micro. People are like, yeah, well, if you do some sick thing here, you can always bring it back. StarCraft is kind of like, oh yeah, there's always comeback potential. I say that honestly just mostly exists in Terran versus Terran. If you lose your whole mineral line to Hellions in a PvT, you're pretty screwed. There's really not a whole lot you're going to be able to do unless it happened while you had like 2 oracles or a warp prism with 2 immortals kill all of the Terran's workers at the same time, because as we know, one of the big strengths that you're gonna see coming out of Terran players in this matchup, if they get that early economic damage, which is really important, it's so hard to catch up to the Terran player. Not only does he have more SCVs than you have probes, which shouldn't happen, but then you add the mules on top of that. But it also gives the Terran player that flexibility to say, I don't need to only be using mules if we're on a similar number of workers, right? If I get supply blocked and I need that supply drop, I'm not going to fall behind economically. If I need to use a scan because I wasn't able to see the tech with my Reaper or my Hellions or my Harass, I can take that scan without falling behind economically. And that once you make the game that easy for TVP, well, then the Marines just start rolling out, right? And you get what happened at the end of that last game.
I especially love what you're bringing up with like the ability and the comfort of being able to do things like scan, because that's exactly what someone who loses a bunch of workers is going to be thinking about it. They're going to be thinking, how can I make a playmaker unit, catch my opponent off guard, and bring this game back? And the scan just shuts down a lot of that. Now we are moving into the second game, and we already see that there's a proxy pylon with a proxy Stargate being thrown up over here from MaNa, and the Reaper did dart around the map a little bit. No chance of actually scouting that starport or Stargate just yet, though.
Yeah, and we did see MaNa attempt this build against Clem in the upper bracket. Maybe not necessarily the exact build, but he did do the proxy Stargate and on at least one of the maps. So souL going for this scout, I really like it. This map is very good for those proxies because it takes a while to get units over there. And actually, the depot to the main base was not raised. So what we end up having now is the Adept killing a fresh mule. Oh, man, you know what? If an Adept is going to the farmer's market and you see a mule that fresh, you have to get it. You know what I'm saying? And that's a fantastic pickoff for the start of the game. Unable to generate any value off of the first mule. And that cuts into your resources so much. We even have a delay on the start of that second orbital command. He's just trying to get his stuff back together from that pressure. And let's not forget, Fear Dragon, even though he scouted that Stargate, it's not like he's in a position to do anything about it. He's going to be kind of contained for a little bit here. If he moves those Marines down, the Oracle could come in at any moment.
Yeah, there's one Widow Mine over here. We'll see if MaNa is able to react quickly and actually micro against that Widow Mine. Oracle does dive in on top of one of the Marines over here. I mean, that's basically almost everything. Okay, another SCV going down. Does MaNa realize? Does he know where the Widow Mine is? It's so close. It's in that mineral line.
I mean, man, the Widow Mine tucked by the mineral patch. That's Babby's first TVP lesson. Let's be honest here. If any, all these pro tosses, they're a little. They've been around the block enough times to know where the Terrans like to put those mines, and you usually got to be a little bit more crafty. I always find that the strongest Widow Mines seem to be in the most random places, right? Where they're not protecting anything. The kind of place where you would move an Oracle. Yeah, the kind of place where you would move an Oracle to see if there's anything, right? You want the mine to be at the spot that you would normally go to check for mines in the mineral line. And then the Protoss is like, what the hell? It shouldn't be a mine here. There's nothing here. And, you know, then you win the game because Terran. So third base is going to start up for MaNa. And look at the worker count. This is where Protoss players want to be versus Terran. This right here is why you could honestly refill quite a few of the reservoirs lost in the state of California with the tiers of Terran players that lose a couple of workers at the beginning of a game, because now you've got 15 worker lead for MaNa. He's pulling in that cash, Fear Dragon. And everything that I said about the positives of being ahead on workers for Terran, you hurt just as much on the other side. So it's going to be a lot harder for him to use any sort of scan. It's going to be a lot harder for him to use anything else. Good grab on the Phoenix with that very random Widow Mine at the edge of his base. But it's going to be very, very tricky. If he needs to make sure he doesn't make any more mistakes in this game. He can, of course, come back with good positioning and good play, but it's not going to be easy. And look at this reliance on the fast drilling claws with that quick armory. I don't see anybody do this. I like this. Ooh, this is some weird stuff you're up to, souL. Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah, for those who don't know, there was that change a few weeks ago, or maybe like a month and a half ago now, where if you get the armory up, you basically do get the ability for your Widow Mines to just stay cloaked even after they fire their shots. But Drilling Claws still allows those Widow Mines to burrow just a little bit faster. And a lot of Terran players seem to really, really enjoy it. But a bit of a supply. Oh, actually, that's a really bad supply block there for MaNa. Oh my God.
That's a hard supply block. When you're unfortunately, you're going to have to delay those types of units. It's not one of those situations that you want to be in. I do find it interesting that he's got so many of his zealots out on the map with just this one stalker. Does he think he's going to break this? I think souL has the perfect setup to hold this. And he doesn't even have a prism to reinforce. That's no. What is that? A day late and a dollar short or something is the saying. That's not. There's a lot of Terrans that have complained about charged zealots over the years, Fear Dragon, but do I think 7 charged zealots are going to kill the bunker siege tank, burrowed Widow Mine, Cyclone Marine
supply depot wall?
Defense, yeah, with the supply depot engineering bay wall? No, I think you're pretty okay there.
Yeah, and I think MaNa agrees with you wholeheartedly. So he ends up backing off. He's still now going to be getting up that robotics bay, getting ready to move into that next transitionary splash damage tech. But the Widow Mines are coming on in. This cannon is actually going to be really important over here because, yes, sure, the Widow Mines are going to be able to pick up and get out here and everything. And there is still ability to just react quickly. But remember that these Widow Mines have that armory. They do need detection to actually get picked off.
Yeah, and that's the big buff of going for that fast armory build. And I'm going to tell you, I really like these types of openings, even when you're up against somebody who, you know, if you're not going to be playing mech or doing anything super crazy, it's still nice because a lot of the muscle memory that players develop and build over the years playing StarCraft is very focused around what you're used to. And if you're not used to Widow Mines burrowing instantly, then the pull time on those probes is going to be a little bit late. And that's how you get those 5 worker kills. So he's offsetting a little bit, but we're seeing the leveraging of that economic lead in the form of the double robotics facility Colossi production. So he doesn't have the money to start cranking out a bunch of Vikings with this army yet. But unfortunately, by the time he starts building Vikings, there's probably going to be like 4, maybe 5 Colossi on the map, which, Like, yeah, you're not A moving bio into that Fear Dragon. Also, your Widow Mines, they're not very useful against that either.
It hurts too, as the Terran player in this situation where you've gone for those Widow Mine drops. The Phoenix that MaNa was able to get out from that proxy Stargate that gets kept alive, kills off 2 of the medevacs that you've been dropping with. Now you have to replenish the medevacs before you could even think about going into Vikings, much less the fact that he still is not resuming Viking production even after getting out his first 2 medevacs. This is going to be a very, very tough spot in about a minute here for souL.
Yeah, well, it's not going to get any easier. Honestly, him attacking with the 2 Colossi might be his best opportunity at kind of resetting this game, because I feel, you know, there's a tipping point when it comes to Colossi versus Bio where everybody loves to try and dive on the Colossus. Like, that's been a meme since the beginning of StarCraft, when you would do your 2 base move out while you take your 3rd in TVP. And back in the day when Protoss was always stuck on just their first 2 bases, right? A lot of people dive on that Colossus, but 3 Colossi, the Archon support, I think, makes it really hard to dive, but it's not impossible. He's going to need really good control. He has tank, he has a bunker. The position of the Colossi, though, may end up becoming an even bigger issue, though, as he's zoning this out. He doesn't want to attack into the 3rd. He just says, oh, I'm going to take the undefended main base in natural and just try to kill you here. And maybe MaNa's going to be able to get the win here, because I don't know how well he's going to be able to attack into this. He's using the pickup drop micro with that prism, and souL is just going to tap out. His drop on the other side of the map got nothing done. GG for MaNa. He had like 2 medevacs worth of bio sitting outside the main base of MaNa at the end of that game. And I'm wondering, like, if you have everything back home, can you jump on it? Obviously, if he had waited for like 5 Colossi, there would have been more units for souL, but it's a tough break. You take that much damage early on economically versus Protoss and you don't deal it back, you're pretty much dead.
It is a really, really tough spot from there. I was a little bit concerned there for a few seconds, because when all the Zealots go to the natural, I think, okay, if the Zealot buffer is gone, is that the opportunity to do exactly what you're talking about? Dive in on top of those Colossus, try and get the pickoffs. But I actually realized, like, a really nice thing about that position MaNa was in is that he could actually elevator, because Colossus can walk up cliffs. He could elevator his Colossus up toward the main base. So he actually had a lot of micro room backwards, even though he was up against the wall. So really, really nice positioning there that MaNa was able to get into. And like you said, hitting the perfect timing where the medevac count was still just barely coming back, and there were just 0 Vikings. There was no way to deal with that Colossus count.
Yeah, that's the hard thing, especially we were talking about this. It was one of the reasons why he almost kind of tossed that game on Death Aura too, was when you're making those move outs without bio, you have the same effect when you're on the defensive side as a Terran player. If you're moving out your 2 medevacs, if you're moving out your only medevacs to do that drop, to do the harass, especially if you're losing any of them, then, you know, if you're MaNa, you got to be thinking to yourself, okay, the best case scenario for him is that he has a lot of bio, but he's harassed with his medevacs. He's harassed with his mines. There's not going to be anything else waiting at his base unless he somehow had a 4th, you know, a hidden base that I didn't know about the entire game, that he's suddenly able to pump 6 Vikings at a timeout. No, that's not what happens. So that's what allows you to be able to make these big pushes. And that's how MaNa was able to close the game out. Yeah, there was a good amount of bio there, but like he just didn't have anything else. He had like 3 scoops of vanilla ice cream with no toppings at all, Fear Dragon.
That doesn't sound so bad as someone who doesn't eat any toppings on the ice cream, but I get where you're coming from.
Just vanilla, nothing else?
Yeah.
No syrup?
You know what, Nate? Just like my
Jimmy's
commentary, I'm a vanilla man.
No peanuts? You don't even put peanuts on your ice cream, Fear Dragon? That's...
Wait, do people put peanuts on ice cream? Is that a thing?
Oh, okay, I can't have this conversation.
Like, okay, I know like sprinkles and M&Ms and, you know, Twizzlers or whatever. Peanuts? I don't know. I feel like it would get in the way of ice cream, but okay.
You're missing out. You're missing out, Fear Dragon. That's all I'm gonna say. We are going into Eternal Empire for game number 3. It's tied 1-1. I'm having a good time. This has been a good match. This match is delivering.
This is probably the match that I was the most excited about for today in terms of like the Europe side of things, because I think that both of these players are really, really strong. They both have had their kind of like pitfalls in terms of, or not even pitfalls, but they've kind of had their dips in tournament performances a lot of the time. But they're both at the tournament performance highs right now. souL is playing really, really well, finally in big premier tournaments. MaNa is really, really excelling. Like he oftentimes kind of goes through those ups and downs. So So it's kind of just this magical time where we're getting the two players in their best form. And that's always something I'm going to be in favor of, Nate.
Yeah. Well, hey, good StarCraft. I'm always going to be in favor of Fear Dragon. I just like to see good close games. And speaking of the man who just tied it up for us in the Northeast, the Blue Protoss player, he is MaNa.
And down in the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have the red Terran player from Team Makers. He is souL.
Yeah, Eternal Empire, we always meme about the defensive map, right? This is the obvious defensive map. It's easy to hold stuff, but you know, it's deceiving because you have a lot of airspace still. You have that big backstab route for prisms on like the right side, for example, of souL's main. So it's not like you can't be aggressive on it. And I'd still say it's one of the good maps for Blink 2. You can't really cover the whole main and natural from any one spot with siege tanks against Blink pressure. But maybe MaNa will just proxy another Stargate. It seemed to work well on map number 2.
Oh yeah, it really, really did well. Even after getting scouted, it's kind of what you were saying. You know, even though you scout it, didn't actually have any units to really deal with it. So we still ended up losing 5 or so workers. And I mean, that gave MaNa a little bit more than just the normal like 8 or 9 probe lead. I think he was at like a 15 or so worker advantage there. And that definitely helps out. That definitely helps you in getting that transition out. But we have a pretty normal opening from both sides. This time it is going to be that Reaper opening, which I don't actually think we've seen at all from souL. No, maybe he did get a Reaper last game. I'm trying to remember.
You know, he's been skipping out on the Reaper a little bit. I think the first one in the first game he didn't make one until you had like the Hellions already out to do the boop. To your credit, Fear Dragon, there's a weird number of people in chat that have never had crushed peanuts on their ice cream, and your lives will all be better when you finally get a chance to try it, as long as you're not allergic, obviously.
I'll tell you what, Nate. We usually have a little bit of a break between NA and EU. I have ice cream in the fridge and I have peanuts. I'll crush some peanuts.
You gotta crush. It's like crushed peanuts. It's the thing. Trust me. It's good. It's okay. Good. Let me know your thoughts. That goes to you, everybody in chat as well. Okay. I know every word delivers nowadays. So spoil yourselves. Treat yourselves. Now he goes for the assimilator block here, which this late in the build development is it doesn't have to be that big of a problem for souL. I think souL is one of those Terran players who is also not opposed to being greedy. What I will say is interesting though, Fear Dragon, is the Stargate choice for MaNa. So he goes for a gas block, and he's going to go for the follow-up to be something that can be countered by mineral-only units. So unless he thought he was going to build Hellions, and this assimilator sees the starport starting up, right? Unless he thought it was going to be a Hellion opener, which we can see right now, it's not just straight into Hellions. Like, you can still defend all of this. Like, Widow Mines don't really cost a lot of gas. Marines don't cost any gas. At best, he's delayed like a fast armory and a liberator maybe, but I don't know that it's going to end up having too much of an impact on this game. So it's probably going to be that Oracle coming out. Phoenix instead. Okay. That is an interesting choice.
I was going to say, so the two things I can maybe see with this is that one, maybe he's hoping that he like gets souL to be like, oh, well, I'll go for a fast 360 build or something, which is clearly not going to be like
but a Phoenix opener isn't even good against that though.
Yeah.
I'm like, you force your opponent to maybe expand for a third, but you just don't have anything that can actually punish that.
Yeah. So the other thing that I was thinking is kind of what you were talking about the map and how this does have a lot of that dead airspace, for example, to the right for souL of his main base, where you can actually elevator a lot of those medevacs. And even after you take your third base, kind of being able to dart between the main and the third base can be really frustrating. So I wonder if MaNa is also accounting for some of that, getting out those medevacs early and just shutting down any of that aggression.
Maybe. It still feels weirdly passive out of MaNa. I think that going for Phoenix is just, it leaves you with the least options to punish any sort of delayed tech. Because look, he didn't immediately retake that main base gas. He has one in the natural now, and he's getting the third command center, but he has nothing to worry about. Yeah, there's a Robo Bay coming in, but is he going to go for a Phoenix into Disruptor drop or Colossus drop? No, he's probably going to go straight into just like regular old Colossi at home, which souL is going to have plenty of time then to power up. I do wonder if MaNa is thinking a little bit further down the line, like he wants to try and do something with just like a regular Phoenix Colossus
Drop
push.
for the natural. The Widow Mines do manage to unload or burrow over there, even though I think the Observer had caught wind of this. So it looks like MaNa does manage to keep most of his probes alive over here. And now he's going to be able to snag the medevac. And he should be able to snag all 3 of those Widow Mines. Or 3, yeah. 2.
His armory is almost done. He's been going for fast armory pretty much every game, which I do really like. But yeah, there was an Observer there, just so we're all clear. There was still an Observer over there by the natural expansion. And the 3rd command center is finishing. I'll say this though, Fear Dragon, the next step for this type of build, which souL hasn't been doing, but assuming that you're in any sort of good position or decent position, maybe if against builds like this, where Phoenix Colossus should be strong against like a mine-based army, like at least the Colossi don't really ever worry about mines. I think that you maybe just go for really fast +1 ship weapons. It's good. It helps in so many different situations, and something that we just never really get to talk about enough. But one of the reasons why like spamming out Liberators isn't as good as it used to be is because it takes 3 hits to kill Stalkers. But if you get +2 for ship weapons, your Liberators 2-shot them. And then obviously it's going to help your Vikings. It's going to help everything versus the Colossi. It'll help you kill this Observer maybe. I haven't mathed out a Viking upgrades versus Observers, tragically. Maybe during our break before we go to NA.
Well, oh my God, it barely doesn't get it. I think he's going to go again, right? No. Okay.
He kind of moved his units there like he was going to.
Yeah.
It was like one of those fake outs, you know?
All right. Oh, he scans. No! I think he was waiting for the energy, and then he thought, oh, the Observer would stick around.
Waiting for it to land? Man, oh, well. I would have been really mad at MaNa if he just left his Observer there, like, oh, you won't do it. And then he lost it to one of the
calling your bluff.
Interestingly placed scans.
Okay, well, Nate, this is the fun part where Thermal Lance is finished. 3rd Colossus is more than halfway done now. Do we end up seeing, okay, I was going to say the Twilight Council's on the way. I was going to say, do we end up seeing the big transition out into the Templar Archives? Because I feel like a lot of pro players, they do like to stop around 3, maybe 4 Colossus. Oh.
Yeah, at some point it becomes more, I think, APM efficient. Because you don't really need to micro the Colossi too much unless the Terran's doing some really funky spreading. But like you want to use the Disruptor. I like the Disruptor as the follow-up to this because it's going to naturally go against your tendency to try to jump on these forces. And if I take that a step further, analyzing the situation, there's no charge. So he's making a move into Stalkers. He's getting Blink. But at its core, this wasn't really like a Stalker Colossus army. This was a Phoenix Colossus opening. And since he's lost a Phoenix or 2, but he's still building them. And I feel like the big fear has to be getting dived on, and the Disruptor is going to be good against that. Yeah. Well, it can be. Sometimes diving on the Disruptor is how you win, too.
That is true. Especially when there's only 1 Disruptor. But I mean, the 2nd Disruptor is also going to be followed up over here. Even though the Twilight Council was made, we didn't really see the Templar Archives following us up as quickly like we saw in that last game. So MaNa should have a lot of the tools he needs to try and keep this army from doing those kind of dives with a combination of both the medevacs and, the Phoenix and the Disruptors. But medevacs loading up again. I don't know if the Phoenix are in position this time. No, they are. They actually are sitting over by that natural.
Yeah, now Blink isn't done yet, so the Northwest forces are going to be able to retreat without too much trouble. But as you were saying, those Phoenix are covering one of the weak spots on this map. And you see a Colossus standing next to a shield battery and a mineral line. Good luck, I think is what they say. So he immediately starts up a fusion core, and I like this a lot. Now, Fear Dragon, the obvious choice here is ranged Liberators. You've had an armory for about, like at least 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, now he starts the +1 ship weapons. I was trying to will it in. I was trying to, just will it into happening. There we go. So those upgrades are going to end up being really important for this transition. Because if you get enough Liberators to kill all the Stalkers and the Protoss hasn't like made a good transition out of, or like into Stargate or something versus ranged Libs, like the whole entire game can fall apart in seconds.
Absolutely. We are going to see the little push out over here before any of those Liberators actually get into the mix. Softens up the Nexus a tiny bit. It's actually doing a substantial amount of damage to it. It's gone out through the shields. Disruptor shot does zone him out. I mean, MaNa's army should be way, way better than just half of souL's army, but looks like some drop harassment manages to get 5 more probes over the 3rd base.
Yeah, we got some Widow Mines over here. The Observer not in position. There's only one on the map. It's that Hurt Observer from earlier. And with the time that it's going to take, none of these should be able to shoot, but there's no units here yet. He has to blink the Stalkers over. Even though the Observer is here, he actually, he's at least one or two of these could shoot. Ooh, nice, 7 probes. That's pretty huge.
Definitely hurts. MaNa is actually going to now be behind about 10 workers now. He's clearing out the Zelnago watchtowers and everything. He's trying to get some control of the map, but the big push out is coming here from souL.
See, this is where those Phoenix still end up being really useful, though, because the way that you want to use the ranged Liberators is that they can't be hit from the ground. Like, that's your goal. Fighting just straight up with the Liberators versus the Phoenix, though, that's a play. Liberators actually, turns out their rockets are made from the same comic book paper that the Sentry's laser beam is made out of, the Tickle Ray. Yeah, canonically it exists in both Terran and Protoss production. Who would have thought?
Confetti cannons, for once, would have been more powerful here.
Yes, they would have.
The Liberators do manage to get cleaned up over on the north side of the map as well. And it seems like souL, I mean, he has been loading up a lot of his army into these medevacs, trying to threaten these doom drops. And I have to say, I've really liked how MaNa has been able to use those Phoenix to just discourage souL from doing any of these drops. I actually feel like this is one of those things where, as a Protoss player, if you're out of position for one of those, it can feel like the game just falls apart in that moment. But the fact that MaNa's been able to handle it so far is a really, really good testament to how good his defensive play has been, despite all the craziness that's been happening. Now, I think that those medics are still getting ready to move into the natural, though.
He's going to force the issue. Well, what he wants to do is doom drop and then use the Liberators to cover him. At the same time, though, that 4th base in the bottom right is set up. The 5th base is under attack by something. We got the dang Templar swinging his scythe.
Yeah, nice little bit of, it's, DTs are great just because they are low supply, high value harassment. Look at that. One DT gets the planetary fortress down to burning, so it's got to be repaired back up.
Fear Dragon. Until that planetary is finished morphing, it only costs minerals to repair it, but the mineral cost of gas is going to go way up as soon as it finishes. It's still technically a command center.
That is actually a fact.
If you're ever in a situation where a planetary takes damage or a command center takes damage before it transforms, you want to fix it up first, because the repair cost from like what 1 hit point to max is exactly 25%, I think, or something of the cost of the unit.
25%, yeah.
Yeah. So, but that includes gas once it becomes a planetary. That's why mass repairing them is like, you can burn through a lot of resources fast. You know?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I did not know that it counts as a command center while it's still morphing. That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, the doom drop does get spotted, but there's still a lot of stalkers over here, and even a couple of storms going to be laid out. Remember, that shield battery also going to be useful, but the Liberators are actually getting so much damage done during all of this.
I was going to say he didn't unload all of his medevacs, but when you have this many Liberators, this is what I'm talking about. He doesn't even have +2 yet, but you blink into this? No, forget about it. Lift up, move on out. This is when that right there is exactly what I was talking about. Like those situations, you get that siege up. Now the Liberators tickle cannons, as they have that +1, are going to start to, you know, eventually if you tickle someone long enough, you have to stop it so they can breathe, right? In StarCraft, you don't, because we don't, you know, it's war. So he gets rid of the Phoenix, but the Flea Bacon is done. He's building 3 disruptors at a time and getting DT blink. This is just a fun game of StarCraft right here for your Dragon, isn't it?
Yeah, this is going to turn into a real doozy of a match now, as MaNa's going to have a lot of firepower, but man, souL is just relentless with this mass doom drop kind of over at the natural. The funny thing is, MaNa did not retake his natural just yet, but look at all those DTs. They're going to immediately right-click down at the missile, or it looked like some DTs are going for the missile turret. If he goes after that while he hits on the 1-2 in the front, this forces souL to split up his units in a very, very uncomfortable way. And he's already split up his units because a lot of them are at the natural right now with MaNa.
Yeah, he's really trying to burst down that command center. He does get it. Big drop inside of the main base. Now, important to keep in mind, he's going to warp in some Dark Templar defensively, but he's using the recall to that main Nexus, which does mean it should be able for the Liberators to get a couple of shots off against these. He really does not notice the Dark Templar, huh? That's unfortunate. This army is cleaned up without too much trouble, and he's suddenly got a bunch of Dark Templar inside of his base, hacking and whacking and smacking at the infrastructure.
Yeah, these Z's are still alive from that earlier run by. He's killed off those missile turrets. And now you end up seeing, yeah, the army sims forward. He can scan what? He doesn't actually scan all of them. He should have Blink off of cooldown on at least one of these. And he was Mike. Oh, no, Blink isn't done yet. It was seconds away from finishing. Oh, man.
He's bringing out the nukes. Ooh. Now, the Observer with speed going to find it. Gets 2 Stalkers and a probe. There you go. The nuke just paid for itself and then some.
All right. Disruptors got to be careful. They're in range of the Liberators. They are taking some damage, but killing 5 workers, I mean, that's something. It's definitely something.
Got to make sure those Liberators are sieged up. Now, you see, this is where those libs of +2 absolutely obliterate the Stalkers. They cannot really contest these positions anymore. And that's why I was saying you need to be ready for the transition into Tempest. So, of course, MaNa, he's a talented, handsome young StarCraft player. He knows what he's doing, Fear Dragon. He's already got Tempest out on the map. He's building more. He's got 7 Disruptors. And I am excited to see some DT blinks. I don't know about you, but I'm hoping to see some magic happen. He's gonna scan, gets the Observer.
Oh, this is the Observer.
Just gets 1 Stalker and an Observer. I think that is still pretty good. I don't. Oh my God! Right, he killed the armory. He killed the armory.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was also like, how does he see that? How does he see that? Oh my God, Nate. The unintentional nerf we never thought of. You can remove the invisibility.
In the base trades enough to know all about that, but I didn't think it would happen in a pro game as well. That's a lot of Disruptors. No! Woo! The Ghost!
Oh, most of the Ghost managed to survive over there. The Liberators also going to be able to zone back a lot of this army. Only a single Viking left over, so those Colossus are able to do a good bit of damage over here during these fights.
Yeah, mini soapbox. That is something that you don't think about until it ends up like kind of half screwing you over. But you're like, I researched drilling claws. Where's my cloak? It's like, that's not how it works anymore, baby.
Oh, love it.
Oh, this is a big concave though. If he lands the Disruptors, with this many Disruptors, you can't attack until you are 100% sure you're going to win, and even then you might still lose. Like you just can't attack into 7 Disruptors.
It's so scary too, because you see the entire Protoss army gets EMP'd and you're like, I think I got this. And then the Disruptor shots start coming out and you're like, do I have this though? Well, the Liberators are going to start getting picked away at by the Tempest over here. Although the Tempests are not focused running down the Liberators. They're going after some of the bio. They're coming out some big Disruptor shots and they land, annihilating a lot of the army. But both of these Nexus might end up falling, and that is economic damage MaNa cannot take. MaNa has to do something about this.
He's starting to crumble a little bit. He's got 2,500 gas, but this hasn't really been one of those games where he's like, oh, I want to bowl you over with mass gateway units. Like having a bunch of charged zealots when your core is Disruptor Tempest, not going to do a whole lot. That Widowmine does hit the prism, but there was no turret or anything else. So good storms up to get 11 STVs on the back end.
Yeah, it can actually turn into an Archon and even just use that Warp Prism to start warping in more DTs on the other side of the map. But MaNa is very gas-starved right now because he's lost so many of these bases. All I think actually can probably warp in right now is Zealots, and he's going to lose the top left-hand base as well. At this point, I almost feel like MaNa is at the all-in position, but he does have an army supply lead. He has a very scary army. If he can push in quickly enough, I feel like he can do something. But that is the difficulty about Liberators, Nate, is that, well, I guess the most of the Liberators did go down. Maybe that's the opportunity? No, never mind. They're still all there. Still all there.
souL's not repairing his stuff, right? So the opportunity is going to present itself, at least in that a lot of the important units will only take like 2 or 3 hits to kill. Which, you know, at least I view that as a nice advantage for MaNa. But we talk about how good Terran armies are defensively, and that's where I get really scared. He's going to start to bring the pressure, but he just needs to put those liberation zones and get the Disruptors. He's actually killing a few of the Disruptors with those Liberators. And as soon as we reach the point where he thinks that he can get around those Purification Novas and jump on the rest of the army, Fear Dragon, that bio is going to kill everything here in seconds. So you have to be very, very cautious. He did put up 2 Nexi behind this to try and recoup that economic loss. And he's using those half dead units to try and get a little bit more backstab work going.
Yeah, and it's actually doing a pretty nice job, at least on one of the bases. The Tempests are starting to get picked off over here, but I mean, all the Liberators are for the most part gone. There's barely 3 left alive. A full energy High Templar does get sniped off and rallied straight into the fight. That definitely hurts, but MaNa's having to back off over here.
Oh my God.
Barely has that base alive on the north.
Those Marauders are doing way more than they ever should have been able to. DT's going to blink up and bring an end to this harass. But here's the problem. He was already building Vikings for the Tempest in the Colossi earlier, and he's going back into Colossi is MaNa. So that's scary. The only other thing here, I feel like souL needs to just kind of chill out for a second. I try to repair your stuff because his medevacs are all out of energy anyway. Trying to get into another fight right now, he wouldn't really. Most of his army actually still hurt. He actually can't heal all of it. Makes me nervous. Makes me nervous, your dragon.
Especially when he takes one of his very few remaining medevacs, loads it up, and sends it out. So he can't actually participate in the healing. But 4 medevacs are about to pop, and I think that is going to help out souL a lot in that regard. But that being said, it does seem like MaNa is trying to tease out another engagement on the sooner side rather than the later side. Storm Drop kills 7 workers, not bad. And that actually has brought souL down to 44 workers, but I'm a little afraid right now for MaNa that he's going to be a bit too far forward.
Yeah, he's going to have a really hard time breaking this, as we were discussing. The tricky thing here is that these tech units that MaNa needs are
on the north side,
but his bases just keep getting sniped. The economy that you need to support this is really rough. Can he afford to build Tempest still? Sure.
Oh, no.
Can he afford to build anything else around them? No, not really.
Oh, and this hurts too. Well, he should be able to at least push some of these Marauders back, but the rest of the army comes forward. Okay, losing this base, that actually might put just the seal on the coffin over here. I don't know if MaNa is just going to have the resources he needs to replenish any of the army over here. He's already sitting down almost 50 army supply right now, Nate.
Yeah, it's just continuously getting worse and worse. souL did a really good job using his army, leveraging the map with stuff like that big Liberator Doom drop when he cleared out the natural. It's very frustrating to play versus as a Protoss, of course, but unfortunately, that's just the way that it's going to be. You're not as vulnerable to ground assault on this map, but those air attacks are big. Now, EMP, he does still get a storm out. EMP only takes off half the energy of a full High Templar, so he was able to do a little bit there, but there's only 1 Tempest to try and kill, what is this, 8 Liberators now to walk this base down?
Sometimes storms can actually help a little bit if they're all stacked together, but unfortunately, it just feels like there's still not that much behind this for MaNa. The Colossus doing a lot, but eventually those Vikings do manage to push him back, and the base is going to go down again. MaNa is back down to his original 3 bases, which are all mined out. He actually, outside of long distance mining, has 0 income right now. That's not enough, Nate.
That's not very. These are the scans that you do as souL, where you're like, what's left? How does he still have any units? And then you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm just dead now. It's unfortunate, but souL still got 2 other mining bases. There's not really anything left. Even the DT got hit by the EMP, so it gets revealed temporarily. He's got the scan. And we're gonna see souL go up 2-1. It looks like that. Shot was amazing, but when you're at 35 supply, you're gonna need more than that. GG, souL takes the lead 2-1 in this best of 5.
Really well played there by souL, but we are going to head to a short break before moving into game number 4, so don't go anywhere. You're watching the DreamHack Masters. We're moving into game number 4 here in this PVT, with souL being able to claim a 2-1 lead after that last game on Eternal Empire. Next map is going to be Pillars of Gold. Nate, do you have any thoughts about how the series is going so far?
Oh, pretty dynamic, pretty back and forth. Honestly, really like the way that MaNa's been playing. But as I said, going into this series, I think that souL has kicked his gameplay up a notch recently, and it's been fun to watch him. You know, he was. Not that there's any collusion, of course, but he was hitting me up. He was like, "Yo, Nate, I hope you got your eyes on me. We got that War Chest team league starting soon. You know, you know what I'm saying? Hint, hint, wink, wink." And I'm like, "All right, so let me show me. You know, show me in your games. We'll talk. We'll have that conversation."
Yeah, he's definitely shown some great play, and I really have to say, souL has been living up to a lot of the hype now, finally, and has been given around him. If he's able to best MaNa over here, that's going to be a huge step forward. Not only in the fact that this is lower bracket, this is an elimination match, but if he wins this and go on to fight off versus Vanya, I think that's another doable match for him. You go on to fight off versus the winner of Raynor souL. I mean, that's a tough match, but that's a career maker right there.
But we're not there quite yet, Fear Dragon. In the Northeast, trying to get up to the next round of our lower bracket. In red, we have Maker's souL.
And down in the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have the blue Protoss player from Team Liquid. He is MaNa.
Well, that was quite a riff.
Short and sweet. Just like I feel some of MaNa's builds are. And
oh, Pog.
What are you feeling?
Is this the second gateway?
Or are you feeling
it's too early. It's too early. This is the second gateway build. This is the if you Reaper expand, you're probably going to instantly die build. So we will see. Now, souL did on, I think it was game 1 or 2, go for an SCV scout around the outside of his base. He never crossed the map. I don't know if he would see it checking here, but he did find the Stargate on Everdream. So the SCV is going to check over this way. He's going to head across the map. This is still a good scout. But here's the problem, and I actually think this build is even stronger now that parting, it kind of broke the meta. Because typically, when you get to your opponent's base and you see that there's no Nexus, that still tells you you're being attacked by something. But Cybernetics Core First does not tell you that you're being attacked anymore, because there are some pretty macro-oriented builds now coming out of Cyber Core First that make you as a Terran have to question whether or not you need to cancel your command center, throw down a fast bunker, keep your Reaper at home. All of these being very good questions. But what makes this build strong is that typically a Reaper expand, okay, he does cancel the command center and start a bunker. This is the right thing to do. He would not have been able to hold his natural against this. But this second gateway build is just so strong. The first time I think I saw this build was in GSL in like 2017. We were in that like weird proxy meta. And it's kind of just been one of those builds that Protoss players throw out there. You get a really hardcore amount of pressure with the Stalkers early. It's pretty easy to cancel like the natural. And honestly, with the shields and the poking ability of the Stalker, this bunker finishes at literally the perfect possible time. But if he doesn't have that there, you would just die. You'd have a Marine and a Reaper to fight against like possibly 3 Stalkers.
There's literally nothing you can do at that point. Now, we do see, Probe does get picked off over here, but the Reaper ends up going down to the Stalkers. So no more vision out on the map over here for souL outside of the SCV building an engineering bay inside the natural of MaNa. But this will also delay MaNa from being able to take an expansion. And MaNa is starting up the Twilight Council. And I think that that follow-up is even going to get scouted over here.
Yeah, that's being able to see that would be nice. So the probes go for the block. Whoop up. Nope. Okay. He's not going to be able to get away. Tased. He got tased to death, unfortunately. Now, these Stalkers come back and pull up this depot. This actually, or the engineering bay that's here. This is actually pretty important for souL because it's not uncommon to need to build like a tank or more than one Cyclone to get out of your base when a Protoss does this build to you. As one of your big fears is, you know, naked Marines just don't really trade very well against gateway units early on unless they have a bunker, right? But if you don't have the bunker already on that ramp, it's very hard to build one when Stalkers are out there. So knowing that MaNa's units went home, the fact that MaNa's not trying to stay out on the map, he does, you know, at this point, if he went back to the natural, there could already be a tank. There could be a Widow Mine. He doesn't have Blink yet. So things slow down a little bit for souL. He doesn't need that bunker anymore, but the fact that he's keeping it tells me that he's not 100% sure about how safe he is.
Yeah, he's even sending out that one Marine. I mean, remember, he sent out one Marine when he had one Marine to try and get some scouting information. So he is eventually going to make his way around the corners of the map and get the scout out and see, okay, there is the natural being taken and everything. And he may even be able to get up into the main base, but all the stalkers are actually sitting over there waiting for a potential drop or a Raven or something to come in. But we didn't actually see the super duper fast tech up to starport or anything over here. This was a command center follow-up from souL.
Yeah, and just having to build it in the main base like that is never going to be fun. Weirdly enough, both players' economies are so delayed between the eBay block and the command center cancel that don't feel like we've got too big of a disparity. Protoss is up 5 workers, which I think is better than normal for Terran, especially with the second mule. He won't have quite the normal economic lead that you should have. And that really just boils down to the way that souL quickly reacted. He didn't try to protect the natural. He didn't try to finish the command center. If he had, he might have lost the game already, but he definitely would have lost some SCVs.
Okay, well, this is the moment that MaNa can start getting a little more aggressive out on the map again. Blink is finished up, and there's a Warp Prism that's going to be providing that high ground vision. I like that souL keeps sending these Marines around, but for a second I thought maybe that Marine was actually going to stay as a spotter for the area where the Blink Stalkers could blink on forward. Marine is still going to encounter the Stalkers. If souL is paying attention to his mini-map, he'll know that those Stalkers are making their way over, and I actually see that souL is positioning his units right on that ramp, so he's getting ready to move into his main base to defend. Even got the tank up there.
Yep. Now he did transition pretty seamlessly into that terrifying parting setup, right? He's got 4 gateways, Blink, and the Prism. And if he micros well, it's going to be very hard to deal with this. So the big thing is you've got a lot of space in your main. You don't want to lose your production. So everything's tucked back over there, which means MaNa will be able to get something. He's going to be able to at least get that refinery, almost got that reactor, and burns out some of the energy from the Raven, which may not seem like a big deal at the time, but we've had so much Raven harass even in this best of 5. It is significant to deny your opponent any and all opportunities to do something.
Yeah, all right. We had a warp into some more stalkers from the Warp Prism. They're actually going to drop over the natural. This is actually really cute. He's going to try and go for a little 1-2 punch over there. The Observer is also keeping an eye out on that high ground. Sees that the army is still mostly over there. The stalkers are going to pull all of the army out of position. Oh, MaNa, he's actually pulled the rest of his stalkers over the natural. I thought for a second maybe it's the 1-2 punch. You pull the entire army over to the natural and then blink up to the main base and start sniping off the tanks. But I guess that is 4 tanks now.
Yeah, and with this many siege tanks, busting it with stalkers isn't going to be easy. But a part of this is also to put fear in the heart of the Terran. And if souL had tried to squeeze out the Raven or the medevac, somehow the Raven did manage to get squeezed out, proving me wrong as I'm trying to make my point. But you have the opportunity to catch these things, is I guess what I'm trying to say, and prevent it from being able to do damage. Maybe you either see it and then you send your army home, or, those stalkers are being dropped around the same edge of the map that the Raven's going. And then all of a sudden you just unload them out of the Prism and you get some damage in. Now, with that Colossus coming out, you have to keep in mind that siege tanks aren't necessarily bad against those either. He somehow gets the Cyclone and saves the stalkers with the Prism. That was pretty well.
Micro God. Oh my God, he's even going to come back in.
I'm angry.
Would you warp in a bunch of zealots right here? You're like, the army's not coming.
Why not? Your opponent's attacking you, but you need stuff at home to defend, which I think is a smart play to bring stuff back. Because here's what's in my mind. There's no charge. So zealots aren't really going to do a whole lot. And this actually does terrify me because Marine tank, which is for the most part what this is with some Marauders, is not bad at all versus Stalker Colossus. Like Stalker DPS. Yeah, in these numbers, Stalker DPS is not what's going to kill this army. It has to be the Colossus. It has to be the Colossi. And he's bought enough time now for extended thermal lance to finish, so the Colossus has its full 9 range, but the siege tanks are also very good at zoning those away too. So he's slowly inching his way up. He's going to be forced to attack. And those slow zealots, they're not really doing a whole lot, Fear Dragon, but good force fields kind of make the army positioning awkward for our Terran.
Shield Battery Overcharge is keeping a lot of these stalkers alive as the bio tries to take him out. Most of the bio's now gone, and now the Zealot's being dropped on top of the siege tanks to clean them up. The siege tanks splash damaging themselves, and MaNa manages to hold. And this was a very big committed attack here from souL. He sacrificed all of his tanks, his entire bio force, And let me ask you, Nate, the third base is now finished up, but I feel like MaNa has the ability to deny it from immediately just starting to mine now, right?
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. Taking the third is impossible for souL at the moment. I think the best thing MaNa can do is go across the map. We have to take into account the state of things. He did get that Warp Prism recalled back, and the side benefit of that is that he can now bring it forward with his army to reinforce. He didn't throw it away, didn't lose it, didn't get sniped. And also, like I was talking about, the Stalkers were always just going to be fodder, and he let the Stalkers be fodder. Even though they're expensive in that situation when you don't have charge, is all he could do. But he kept the Colossi alive. So now he gets to work with the choke points. Now he gets to bring this pressure. Now he can warp in more reinforcements. And without Vikings, the only option is to stim through a choke point against these Colossi, or maybe try to unload 2 medevacs south of the main base. But either way, the Stalkers do poke forward. Doesn't get the siege tank, though, and SCVs are coming off of the line, so things are getting real dicey over here. That one Colossus super low is going to get killed. He's got kind of being distracted by 2 Marauders being healed off to the left side, so souL able to clear out a lot of the gateway units. This was a bit of an overextension, I feel. Somehow both Colossi are still alive, though, so he's going to warp in another round and say, let's keep on trucking.
Really, really scary moment there. It seemed like MaNa was going to be in a lot of trouble, and he actually attacked in seconds before charge was actually finished on up. But oh, nice micro with the Colossus and the Warp Prism picking him on up, but these Marauders still going to be able to take care of most of the Stalkers. Sentries also end up falling. Looks like the Stalkers go for the blink to snipe off a medevac, but they are going to be sacrificing their lives in exchange for it. Sure, the Colossus does manage to stay alive with the Warp Prism. They'll do get recalled, but that is still a kind of scary army now for souL, but souL is really hurting economically.
Yeah, this has been a wild one, honestly. Like, MaNa's been more than willing to throw away everything except for his most expensive units, which that's how you got to play Protoss, right? Even though all of your units are expensive, the most pricey ones, like this Prism coming back again.
Ooh.
You never see sequels in Protoss versus Terran, and here we are. Not quite Matrix the Third, so I like this a lot. And you pointed it out, but he recalled the Colossi with that Prism, so he's not actually really lost much of those. He's lost 1 Colossus this game, which I do think is was still a bit of a mistake, because he had really good control and he could have moved it back a little bit. But now let's see the counter attack. The big drop, multiple siege tanks inside of the main base mineral line of MaNa. He's bringing the Colossi over. They are a little bit clumped, though. The siege tanks are going to try to zone those out. He does have the Zealots charging forward this time, though. That is going to help change this dynamic. But Pure Dragon, this is a little bit of what I was worried about, though. Another of the Colossi do get killed. It's all about preventing that big death ball snowball from the Protoss, at least long enough that you can get tech to deal with it. Oh, and there's the Prism.
Yeah, that's going to really hurt. But at least now MaNa does know the army is moving across the map from that angle. You have to respond to that. He has to get units up in position. 2 Colossus still alive. One of them very low on hit points. Is already taking damage from the siege tank. Does manage to still survive over there. The medevac's going to be coming in from behind to help support, but the entire Bi army is roasted and toasted before that happens. I think that's the tipping point over here, as the medevac's also going down. I mean, souL is sitting at nearly half the supply now. MaNa, I think he finally managed to do it.
Not having the Warp Prism makes you feel like if you dive on this army, you could buy yourself another minute or two, but I think the other problem becomes he lost all the medevacs, right? So we have a bunch of bio that's currently hurt, missing about, 20% of its health. And guess what? It's going to need to use that 20% of its health again in order to be able to fight against this. So now you're going to have a very paltry Terran army trying to stave off what is a very small but powerful Protoss contingent force.
Well, wait until the next round of Zealot Warp Prism. I feel like that's going to become a little bit scarier as well. Warp Prism does decide to go out of warp-in mode because MaNa just wants to go for the attack right now, and he's going to get it. 2-2. Series is tied on up.
How about that? What a game.
Yeah.
I like that build a lot, though. I personally find that very hard to play against when Protoss properly execute that 2-gate opening, because even though I felt like at the end of the day, number-wise, things were still pretty good there for souL, I don't know, MaNa just did a really good job of controlling his units. Like, those Colossi live forever, right? The Colossi live forever. The Prism lives forever. And those are units that are big targets for the enemy. So the fact that he was able to retain them through all of the fights just really shows how well his decision-making, but also just his army movement was.
Yeah, I also have to say, I want to say low-key, but it's kind of high-key. MVP for that big defense that was over at MaNa's third base. The shield battery overcharge, allowing stalkers to trade versus stim bio a lot better. Enough of them survived. You're talking about how they were kind of acting as the cannon fodder on the front lines, but it was cannon fodder that was actually surviving. They had like almost the durability of zealots for a little bit there. And that allowed them to trade out versus the bio until only the tanks are left. And then when only the tanks are left, then you can actually go drop zealots in and clean those up actually pretty effectively. So I feel like MaNa, if he doesn't have the shield battery overcharge available over there, if he had used it on like the drop over in the main base or something else, I actually think that MaNa probably would have lost that fight. So really, really helped out there.
Well, as we all know, especially these days, right? The dying Protoss race needs all the help that they can get. That shield battery overcharge definitely helped keep things a little bit balanced there for that fight. As we know, those pushes are so difficult to hold in PvP, especially with like that wide angle too. That's so much easier for the bio to spread out, but I thought his force field control was also really good. And here it gives us an interesting finale to this best of 5 Fear Dragon. The last map is Submarine, which we have not really seen a lot of. It's a very, very short map. You have the whole Reaper Cliff into the natural as well as the main. There's a whole bunch of different ways that this one can get weird. Lots of like 1 or 1.5 base all-ins in many matchups due to the size of it. So I asked myself, are we going to see some cheese? And MaNa, he can cheese when he feels like it. I don't know that souL's big on it. Would you even try to do something so crazy in game 5 though?
Ooh, I mean, I think it's the fact that MaNa especially has been one of those players that's been around longer in the scene. He's got a lot of experience. I feel like it's those kind of players that do bust out the cheese in game 5 because there's so much on the line with like, this is an elimination match. Do you really want to do it? And the experienced players kind of say, well, yeah, because they won't expect it. Because it's so difficult to do, they're going to be less prepared for it. They're going to probably play safer. So yeah, I really wouldn't mind if MaNa did something like that. Submarine is definitely a pretty funny map, and I always enjoy it when we get to move to these kind of maps, just because I always think, all right, you guys have been playing a lot of custom games, or sorry, a lot of ladder. Maybe you play some custom games. How many games have you played on this map? Huh? You veto all those maps in the ladder map pool? Do you know the best things to do on this map? Do you know how to truly abuse this map? That's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, we're just in the lobby. I think we're waiting for souL to confirm that he's ready, and we'll get this one underway. But that is usually the interesting thing. I feel like we kind of oversell that aspect of it at times. I'll never forget, nobody ever will, Dasan Station. And we talked about how we're like, oh, nobody ever plays this map, which means we should always have the greatest games of all time on it when we are forced to play on it, because it'll be so scrappy. But then it actually just turned into, no, he did a 1-base tank all in, and as everybody expected, it was broken. So there was nothing you could do against it because you had literally no rush distance to your opponent's base. So
I'm with you on that.
I'm just like, I don't know. We try to sell this stuff, but I always like when weird maps are done in like more creative ways. It usually ends up actually giving us those games. A good example.
Golden Wall is a good example. Yeah,
Golden Wall's a decent example. A really good example is Arena. For as much as people still talk about, people still love to make jokes about Arena, but the majority of like the games that we saw on it, outside of those, you know, there were still, of course, the 1-base cheeses.
Proxy Tempest, body build.
Macro games on that map were awesome to watch. They were really good.
You know, before we even do the intros, I do want to say, macro games, whenever we did get to Dasan Station macro games, they were really fun. I just want to put that out there.
They just happened like maybe once in the grand finals. In the top left, we have the blue Protoss player. He is Liquid MaNa.
And his opponent down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have the red Terran player. He is Team Maker's souL. Okay, Nate, I know you're a retro gamer. Tell me, does that remind you of Sonic Adventure? That little beat.
What?
Every time.
No.
What?
What? Who played anything past Sonic and Knuckles? What are you talking about? I had a Sega Genesis. That was it. They never made anything past that. The only thing that disappointed me was I put all the other game cartridges into it because the way that it worked was the top of the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge actually opened to put the other cartridge in so that you could play the old Sonic games with Knuckles. But for some reason, it didn't work with my Power Rangers or my Batman game. That was probably the most disappointing part. I felt like you should know that, Fear Dragon. But that's it.
Okay.
I've only played the first 3 games. I don't need anything else.
You know, I guess I can't hate on it too much. Those are great games. But all right.
Except I was as the middle child, of course, I had to play as Tails, and then once they run off screen, you can't really play the game anymore. So
wait, Tails was great though, because Tails could fly.
Yeah, but you couldn't run. You had to always stay within the same screen as your teammate. That's what made it hard.
That was
when you're 8 years old. When you're 8 years old, that level of discipline is very hard. Okay, Fear Dragon.
My favorite part is that they don't just like teleport you back in. You're actually just there. Your controls still work, but you just don't get to see where you are anymore.
Yeah, or if you go far enough, you fly in. But this game, souL is playing it a little closer to the chest. He's not going for the early scout, but he is building that bunker right next to the command center very quickly. And I've seen Terran players ask and talk about this type of stuff when these matches happen. Like, why does it have to be right next to the command center? Don't the Terrans always put it a little bit further forward when they're playing versus like Zerg or in TVT? Well, the big reason why is you have lost. If you play Terran and you know about this, if you played a lot of games, and you know that one of the big ways a lot of Protoss players will kill you is actually shading way behind that mineral line to deny the command center. And then a second Adept or something shows up and kills your Marines when they jump out of the bunker because it's too far away. This Reaper got 2 probe kills though. Really good, Fear Dragon.
The Stalker moved out as soon as it rallied forward. For some reason, I guess like MaNa must have either forgotten that Submarine is such a small map, so the Reaper maybe gets here an extra little bit faster before the 3rd Stalker pops out, or he just thought that this wasn't a Reaper opening. But regardless, I mean, the Adept does not shade back in behind that mineral line or try and deny the command center, which I actually think there was an opportunity for. There's only 1 Marine in the bunker, easily DPS that I think the Adept could have put up to, and just delayed the command center. But MaNa maybe getting a bit distracted by the Reaper.
Yeah, it's more important to protect, I think, in that situation. Your probes just, you know, we've talked about this a couple of times already, but the advantage that Protoss is supposed to have in this matchup to account for the fact that like mules exist is that you're going to use the chrono boost to build your probes way faster than the Terran gets SCVs. And of course, your probes don't have to, you know, spend time building things. You only need 1 worker to warp in your building. So if you lose workers at any point in the first like 7 minutes of PvT, that is completely like, it's just, you can completely lose the only thing that you're really supposed to have that gives you the ability to deal with whatever the Terran's going to do, because you need that money to build up your defense for the mine drop, and then usually that Marine tank push, especially since we're talking about souL here, who's loved it. He's loved that Marine tank push in this series too.
Oh, we got this little spotter probe over here that's built that pylon. Just keep an eye out for medevac drops and stuff. And it eventually lead into like that 3rd base and everything, but the probe will get sniped off. Stalkers should be able to handle a single Marine, especially since they're in pretty decent numbers. But hey, souL's gonna get a scout out and see, okay, you are making a decent number of Stalkers. It's pretty usual anyways, but you're probably gonna be getting a blink. You're probably going into the usual kind of setup for Protoss.
Yeah, and it's gonna be the Robo Bay behind it. So Mike, are we just gonna have that straight up Stalker Colossi setup again? This map is a little bit choky. And this is a small map, so the repositioning is going to be useful. You won't have to cover as much ground, but you can be more decisive with your movements, and that's always going to be useful. Here's the mine drop, though, in that natural.
Yeah, the probes are pulled pretty quickly. It's not like these Widow Mines have drilling claws or even an armory behind any of this, so they are going to be able to be picked off pretty quickly over here. But Stalker count's not that high, so both medevac, or sorry, both Widow Mines get in the medevac and survive.
Wow. Wow, that was quite the save right there. No little robot man left behind, Fear Dragon. Good grab, good grab.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that MaNa pulled back all of his Stalkers for that, but I guess he wasn't really going to go for a big blink into the main base or anything. The one reason I bring that up is I do feel like you talk about map layouts and stuff. Oftentimes we talk about like, oh, how the natural looks and all that stuff, or whether the main base is exposed. The main base buildings on this map are a lot more exposed, I feel, because you just don't have as much space as you do on some of the other maps. So we were talking about like add-ons and stuff being a little more vulnerable. I mean, if you blink up from the low ground on this map into the main, that's where add-ons actually are vulnerable. You don't really have much of a choice as a Terran.
Well, you know, with what little RNG there is in StarCraft, at least on this map, the add-ons are pointed away from the ramp.
That is true.
Like if souL was in the top left position, he's actually just in a worse. I mean, saying the word disadvantage is really unfair because it's not that big of a deal, but it's much better to be on the right side spawn of most maps like in this setup as the Terran, just because your add-ons are always going to be tucked in away from the ramp. And that does make those, if he did try to blink up, it would require him to go a little bit further in to be able to hit those. But that fast armory again and drilling claws, I love it. Who's doing this? I haven't seen anybody else doing this. I haven't even seen souL doing this. I love it.
Yeah, I think a few of the European players have been catching on to this kind of thing. So we got another Colossus opening coming out from MaNa. He's also going to be getting up charge a lot faster this game than the last game. So he should have a nice, well set up defense here. But move out over here for souL. It's just over here to establish a third base. He's not moving out to try and attack MaNa or anything right now. He might do another Widow Mine drop here and there, but it seems like both of these players have been pretty okay going to the later stages of the PvT.
Yeah, and at this point, it's going to be like this last little mine drop, and then we're going to move to the big phase, I suppose. But keep in mind, the side effect of this, not only will the mines be invisible, because like, yeah, he got the armory, but he also did get drilling claws crazy fast, which means reaction time needs to be plus ultra for MaNa to defend his mineral line against the ensuing Terran attack.
All right, medevac drop comes on in. The stalkers blink forward very quickly, but they don't manage to snipe off the medevac. Oh my god, the Widow Mine gets 7 kills.
Good target fire from that. That's, you know, 7 is not a magic number here, but especially since he lost the medevac, but that's still really, really good. Now he's ahead economically. He's got the SCV lead. Being able to take your third base in this situation as a Terran player is always really nice. If you're on even bases with a Protoss and even workers, you're just making more money, right? Because of the mules. So in that place, that's what really gives you all the extra minerals to put out those big Marine Marauder attacks. And well, we're going to have to see. MaNa's had a little bit of a struggle in some of the big engagements. Even though he keeps his Colossi alive, he's usually been losing every single other unit.
And that definitely hurts over time, especially when, even though charge is finished up, he hasn't had a chance to start warping any of those zealots. But usually Protoss players will hold off on that until the very last second because, you know, the zealots are the pretty quick ones to warp in and get to the front lines. So we'll see when exactly that move out's going to be coming. Observer spots out the army, is still just sitting at home. And MaNa's actually just going to go for the 4th base. But man, Nate, this is where this map feels so claustrophobic. As you start expanding further and further out, you are almost just expanding into your opponent's base. It's so uncomfortable. If you are ever even slightly out of position, it feels like you just instantly start losing bases left and right.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. You got to be on top of it. Since the map is smaller, like it's not as hard to bounce between your own bases. But the thing about this map and the 4th base that MaNa has taken is that it is going to be a little bit further stretched out. He didn't take the one below his natural. So there's not like a center position that really covers everything. He's kind of expanded himself by nature of the way he's done it. And maybe that's just the way that he likes to play this map. Or maybe it's a side effect / consequence of not playing this map a ton. But souL he's going to check off every single possible box. He's getting the EMP upgrade. He's getting a fusion core, second starport, and he's getting extra production too. He wants to get ready for the long haul, as they say.
All right, kill battery is getting over. Oh, 7 kills.
I was wondering if it would hit. I was wondering if it would hit, and it did. It was a big one.
MaNa does manage to defend the drop over his natural. Another Widow Mine's going to get some more damage done over here. And now we end up seeing the 3rd base potentially being vulnerable to a few bio units. But I mean, this is also keeping MaNa at home for a little bit. But now I think souL realizes, wait a second, the rest of the army isn't there anymore. This 4th base doesn't feel as safe any longer. So we end up seeing MaNa starting to push out further. And I feel like one round of warp in should be able to deal with this.
Spear Dragon. Oh my goodness.
Oh my god.
You drop bio into a Protoss base and you see a Templar Archives glowing. I don't know if there's anything that like triggers a Terran kill instinct more than that. The shark smells blood in the water. He's going to get the Nexus in the natural 2015 Pulse style with these drops all over the place. And this is just starting to look like he's He's got a lot of supply left. I don't want to say it's over or anything, but the amount of time to rebuild and reset everything that has just been lost is going to take, it's going to take a while, Fear Dragon. It's going to take a while.
It's brutal. Losing not just the Temple Archives, not just the tech, not just losing a few of those army units as well, but losing the natural. I mean, I feel like it's one of those situations where I almost wonder, should MaNa have just gone for the attack? He was already at his opponent's front door, and then he pulled all the way back home to try and deal with all that. I feel like now souL's going to be able to set up a 4th base over here. He's got Ghost to EMP the army. I don't know if this attack can really work for MaNa, but he doesn't really have too many other options anymore.
No, that's the tricky thing. The Terran player's taking that 4th. The natural is still completely bare as well, which means any follow-up attacks will be hard to deal with. And even the last remnants of these forces, killing those stalkers off, denying the anti-air. And guess what? Archon Zealot Colossi. Yeah, sounds great, Fear Dragon, but he's about to deal with a whole lot of freedom coming out of these Liberators cannons.
Oh, MaNa does get into an interesting position before the army gets here. And funny enough, the bunkers and the supply depot. Oh my God. Choke up this army. Disruptors get a magnificent hit over there, but MaNa's still not able to break through fully. He is forced back for a bit, and he's also dealing with his warpins getting canceled back at home.
The unpowered overcharge. No. Or
that's one way to deal with it.
Oh, that's weird. That looks really weird. I don't like how that looks. I don't ever want to see that again. I'm gonna throw up. That was disgusting. An overcharged unpowered shield battery.
That's a very sad story. Can you overcharge an unpowered shield battery? Like, can you initiate it if it's already unpowered?
I would hope not. I would hope not. There needs to be like a binding resolution to forbid that from ever happening again. It should just blow up. Or it should just stay on, honestly.
The attack is at his front door. MaNa has to defend this. If MaNa cannot defend this, I don't see that he's going to have the economy to make this work, but finding 2 of the Liberators for free, 3 of the Liberators, honestly, and the Siege takes to the front lines, and the Disruptor pushes back to Bio. This is a great start for MaNa.
He just got to kill all of the most important units of souL's army for free. Okay, this is definitely a way back into it as souL gets his world rocked there. That's, you know, those are some really conservative Liberator placements. The way that he put that there just to cover the flank. And MaNa's like, okay, well, I could just kill you, you know. He's like, your regular army up the front, there's really nothing here. And that's what happened. And then the tanks got stuck behind. So really well done there. And MaNa's bringing this game back into a more normal situation. He's had that top base secured now for a little bit. He got the west side expansion. He's about to fly 4 medevacs straight into the army too. So that's fantastic for him.
Ooh, a beautiful pickoff over there for MaNa. And now I feel like he's done enough that right before these 4 Liberators pop, before they can actually get all set up, there's maybe an opportunity for MaNa to move on in over here. The Liberator sieged up in a very defensive spot. Disruptor's going to zone out the Bioforce. The right click down at the command center is not going to be able to get it though. Those SCVs and the repair is just keeping that command center alive.
These Colossi doing a good job of poking though. He's forcing him to fight outside the liberation zones and now having to reposition. Fear Dragon, one thing I'm going to say that I've noticed a lot. Yeah, souL does a really good job of building a lot of bio, but he never has enough medevacs and energy to keep this army in full health. And now if he stims, he's going to be running like 50 hit point Marauders into Colossi. And that planetary on its own is not going to be able to stand very strong for long as it does get destroyed. And the Colossi are just going to keep running. Look how low this bio is. You can't engage with that. He has 3 medevacs with no energy.
Nate, upgrades don't even matter when you have that low hit points on your units. You got one shot by everything, regardless of the damage.
He just canceled everything instead of 4 medevacs. He just reset his starport production because he realized that doesn't really matter what he has because he's going to be forced to stim. He can't even choose to stim. If the disruptors throw out the purification nova, he has to stim to run. Oh, look at that. He immediately has the other command center there, but it don't matter. No. Zealot run by.
Gonna be able to deny that. Liberators siege up in a very nice spot. They will almost guarantee the snipe off on this base, but MaNa's gonna be coming in from behind. Liberators need to resiege. Liberators need to resiege. They start to unsiege now.
Unsieging all of them makes me so anxious. And these zealots, he's got 42 SCVs. He's got 69 probes. He's rich.
This is do or die right now for souL. He has to win the game with this push because He does not have an economy to fall back to. He's going to be able to kill off a lot of probes over here, but that still leaves MaNa with over 50 workers.
This is insane. MaNa bringing this game back is just absolutely mind-boggling to witness. The Liberators are trying their best, but they don't have the upgrades. These Stalkers are in large enough numbers to bowl through them. And speaking of bowling, the Disruptors knock down the rest of the Terran Bio army. And it looks like MaNa is going to close it out 3-2. Ay, ay.